our commercial break, he's smiling like that because the conversation's always interesting.
I mean, on air, off air, you guys bring the heat. I mean, it's incredible.
And Marie, Katie, any parting words? No?
Nope. See you later.
See what I mean?
We said it all already.
All right, we're back at noon tomorrow, and here's Harris.
Fox News alert, the Russia investigation reaches the president's cabinet. Let's go outnumbered overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has been interviewed in the special counsel's Russia probe. The first known time Bob Mueller and his team have interviewed a member of the president's cabinet. The Justice Department says it happened last week. This comes as Robert Mueller is investigating contacts between Trump's presidential campaign and the Kremlin, and whether President Trump's actions in office, including the firing of FBI Director James Comey, constituted any obstruction of justice. The White House says it has nothing to hide.
The administration continues to cooperate with the special counsel. We have been transparent during this process. And as we know, there's no evidence of collusion or wrongdoing from the administration. Attorney General Sessions is continuing his work. The president has confidence in Attorney General Sessions and the work that he's doing.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now from Washington. Catherine?
Well, thanks. Here as Fox News confirms the Attorney General was questioned for several hours last week by the special counsel's office with a focus on his Russian contacts during the election and on the firing of then FBI Director James Comey. The Sessions interview matters because it takes a special counsel investigation and the interviews inside the president's cabinet, and it goes to the issue of whether the president's decision to fire Comey in May last year was an obstruction of justice. Those close to the president say it's within his power to terminate the FBI director, and evidence that has come to light since, such as Comey's leaking of government memos, has strengthened the president's decision. Attorney General Sessions recused himself from the Russia probe over his contacts with the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak during the campaign. Those close to Sessions say his contact with Kislyak was minimal, about 2 meetings, and there is no evidence of coordination that came as a result of those meetings between Russia and the Trump campaign. This is the key thing. The president's lawyer said last week that he felt it was inevitable that President Trump would be interviewed by the special counsel. But sources tell Fox News they believe other witnesses, like Sessions, like the president's son-in-law and others, can answer Robert Mueller's questions, and there may be no single issue that only the president can explain for investigators. Harris.
All right, Catherine, thank you very much. Let's
You're
get
welcome.
reaction now directly from the White House. Bringing in Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Hogan, good to see you today.
Great to see you.
First question for you. How much notice did you get last week that the Attorney General of the United States was going before the Russia investigation head?
I'm not aware of any notification, Harris, but as we've said and maintained, we don't really comment out of respect for the process on the witnesses, on the investigation. We are fully cooperating with the special counsel, and in fact, we've made it very clear that there has been no collusion, and the president has maintained many times, not only is there no collusion, but this is the biggest witch hunt in American history, and we expect the facts will bear that out soon.
Well, I understand you won't comment on the investigation itself because none of us can go inside of it at this point anyway. So we'll move on from just that little bit of this. But, you know, I'm curious because this isn't just a member of the president's cabinet. This is somebody who recused himself. And reports are that the president wasn't real thrilled about that in the first place. So what is the reaction from the White House that it's this particular witness that they're talking to?
But again, this is something the president maintained at the time and made the comment even publicly that he wasn't happy that Attorney General Sessions recused himself. But further than that, I'm going to have to refer you to the process because I really can't comment on it.
All right. Have you talked with the Attorney General since he wrapped up?
I have not. No, ma'am.
The White House has not talked with him since?
Oh, I thought you were asking me personally. I'm not sure if the White House has talked to him. Or, yeah, not me, but I'm not sure if the White House has talked to him at all.
All right. And you know, I've heard from the White House previous to this that there's no way to know exactly when this might be wrapping up. But just the take on where the investigation is now in terms of whom they're talking with.
Oh, I'm not privy to those conversations, Harris. And as I've said, we maintain that there is no collusion there. But I mean, the investigation will continue as long as Special Counsel Mueller decides to let it go on. But we've been clear that there is no collusion, and we are in full cooperation with him and his team.
Could the president be next?
Oh, I'm not gonna speculate on that, but the president has done nothing wrong here. That's clear, and we've wasted taxpayers' time and money and energy on this for the better part of a year, and they have not a shred of evidence implicating the president in any wrongdoing whatsoever.
The reason I ask is because we know from our reporting that the president and his counsel have been looking at how they might answer questions, whether that would be on paper or in person. So I want to give you a last touch on that, and then we'll move on.
Well, I'm going to have to refer you to White House counsel on that and the president's own attorneys. I'm not familiar with those conversations.
All right. Very busy White House counsel. We'll call. Thank you. Let's move on and talk about the federal employees returning to work today. The government shutdown is over. The president signed the official paperwork for that to happen today. As you look at this, the president then tweets, "This is a big win for Republicans as Democrats cave on shutdown. Now I want a big win for everyone, including Republicans, Democrats, and DACA, but especially for our great military and border security. Should be able to get there. See you at the negotiating table." When will that start in earnest, that negotiating?
Negotiations have already begun. The president had many people here from the Republican side and Democratic side here yesterday trying to get a deal done for the American people. He has been very clear. This is a national security package. And their negotiations include four main areas. And one is border security with a wall. Two is ending extended chain migration. Three is killing the visa lottery. And then third is a lasting solution on DACA. The president has been very clear on that, while others on the outside of the administration and negotiators with the president from the Democratic side have been less than forthcoming and, quite frankly, not telling the truth on where we stand on these issues.
How has it maybe polluted the waters a little bit? You know, I think the American people might have been looking and saying, hey, maybe they can get along and they'll negotiate something over the next 17 days, which really only has like 6 legislative days. But then Chuck Schumer said, you know what, I'm taking that $1.6 billion offer off the table as money toward paying for the wall. So is the water polluted already?
Well, look, him taking away, quote-unquote, funding for the wall is like me telling your viewers I'm going to rescind my offer to give them all $1 million personally. It never existed. I don't even have that kind of money. And at this point, Senator Schumer doesn't even have a leg to stand on the issue. He completely misled the public about where the negotiations were. The DHS did an entire study on what we needed to fund the border wall, and it was $18 billion. He comes over here with a phony plan and a fake promise, and not even an appropriation, but an authorization of less than 1/10 of what is needed to secure the border and protect the American people. So the shutdown was on Schumer, and so is this bogus negotiation, because you can't rescind money you never really offered in the first place.
You know, can we talk about the money for just a second for the wall? Are American taxpayers going to front this first, and then the president on the back end will figure out how to get Mexico to pay for it?
Look, the president's been clear there are all kinds of ways to make Mexico pay for this wall, via tariffs and even some money on people who are brought here legally. So that system is yet to be put in place. I don't want to get into specifics, and I sure don't want to get ahead of the president and his negotiations. But let me just say, there are a couple of plans floating around out there right now about how you fund the wall. The one that is the worst is the Senator Durbin and Graham proposal, which did nothing to address the four main areas that would better protect this nation. It increased illegal immigration, it increased chain migration, and it gave amnesty to about 8 million people and did not fund the border wall at all. So that plan right there is dead on arrival. You've heard members of the House tell you they wouldn't even bring it up, and I guarantee you, if by some stroke of luck it got through the House and the Senate, the President of the United States would never sign such a horrible piece of legislation that hurt the American people like that.
We have on a little bit later Bob Goodlatte on the program on some different topics, but I do want to ask you about this, because he led that four-pronged look at this in the House of Representatives with 3 other lawmakers there, and the president had indicated that he liked that plan.
There are parts of it, of course, we like, but I mean, the negotiations are ongoing. They're in the early stages. But as I mentioned, the president is focused on one thing, and that is protecting the American people. And any bill that falls short of the 4 platforms of a border wall, ending the chain migration, the visa lottery, and a lasting solution on DACA, he's not going to negotiate with something that's a joke and not serious on its face.
All right, I mentioned it, Hogan, but it is important to note, you know, 17 days are not a lot, because when you look at the legislative calendar, it's far fewer days than that lawmakers would ever get together. How much of a role going forward does the president plan to play? Because, you know, it's not going to be long before we get to Feb 8th.
I know, but the president was front and center in the negotiations before. We even heard for a while that it might be trouble getting through the House, the CR. The president stepped in, talked to members of the Freedom Caucus, and we actually pushed the bill through. The president is engaged in every aspect of this. He completely and directly came to us and said, let's message it this way. He's not only a brilliant strategist, but he knows the policy inside and out, and that's what's so impressive. So you can't come over here with a phony bill that doesn't do anything but hurt the American people and expect this president to sign it. He's not going to do it because he knows the issue.
All right. I take it from what you're saying, too, since he played a role, he'll do it again if he has to.
Absolutely.
Hogan, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, Harris.
All right. Thanks, you, too. Joining us now, Maryland's Ben Cardin. He's the ranking Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee. Great to see you. So,
Harris, good to be with you.
I think you could hear our conversation with the White House. I know where you're standing. You might not be able to see it. But, you know, this didn't turn out the way that Democrats had probably thought the leverage would be in their corner. What happened with the shutdown? And going forward, I mean, we only have a few more days to avoid another one. What will you do?
Well, first, I didn't want a government shutdown. I don't know any Democrat who wanted a government shutdown. What we want is for us to take up the issues of a budget for our country that balances our priorities, and we want to deal with issues from health care to immigration that need to be addressed. So we do have commitments that negotiations are now ongoing to work out the budget numbers so we can have a budget for this year. We're already 4 months late. The Republicans have been unable to pass a budget. And we now have a commitment for the first time in 5 years that we're going to get an immigration bill on the floor of the United States Senate. And I am hopeful that we'll have a bipartisan, strong agreement on not only dealing with the immigration issues concerning the Dreamers, but that we will have a package that will be right for the American people.
You know, let me ask it to you this way. You said you never wanted a shutdown. Did Chuck Schumer represent you well in bringing it to that point?
Well, you know, we're in the minority. We have a limited amount of power. We understand that. But they do need our votes to get a budget done for this country. And we do want to have a budget that represents the priorities of America. So we're doing our best. We also need to deal with the immigration issue. We're trying to do our best there. And quite frankly, we now have a commitment by Leader McConnell that the United States Senate will take up an immigration bill.
You know, as we move forward, you've got the budget, you have other things that are going on besides DACA and the Dreamers. How much will you continue to tie that journey with the Dreamers to legislation to keep the government open?
The Democrats don't control the schedule on the floor. Leader McConnell will do that. So it's not up to us as to what gets tied together or what opportunities we have to advance issues. We are pleased that we're working on a very tight deadline to get the budget moving and to get the immigration issues considered on the floor of the Senate. As you pointed out, there are not many days left.
No.
I was in meetings today with my Republican colleagues to try to deal with some of these issues. So there's serious discussions taking place, and I am hopeful that you will see the United States Senate do what it should do. Take up an issue, debate it, and pass it.
Senator Cardin, you know, we've been in this mode of just CR, just kick the can down the road since October. Our military, we knew that you had to do something before Feb 1st because they get paid on the 1st and the 15th. So those paychecks now will still keep going in the interim. But, I mean, there's certain things that are tied all up in this, and I'm just wondering how you separate stuff out, keep the military paid while you guys argue over shutting down. And, by the way, the American public is not lost on that constitutional right that you have to continue to get paid while the military doesn't.
All right. Well, look, you cannot run government on continuing resolutions. You have to have a budget. That's what Secretary Mattis has said in regards to our national defense with the Department of Defense. They need a budget. We're now 4 months through the fiscal year that started October 1 without a budget. The Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. At a minimum, they got to get a budget passed. And Democrats are prepared to work with them to make sure that we have a budget for this country. That's our top priority, whether it's the Health Department, whether it's the Department of Defense, whether it's food safety, whatever issue, the agencies need to have a full year appropriation and no more continuing resolutions.
When you hear the White House, and Hogan Gidley was just on, Deputy Press Secretary, and you see the president tweeting, how much political water did you take on with the shutdown? Because the president is calling this a win for Republicans.
Yeah, quite frankly, no one wins with a shutdown. Democrats didn't want to shut down. We believe the shutdown were caused by the Republicans. We offered so many opportunities to keep government open and negotiate the issues, including the budget. But the Republicans rejected that. They control all of the levels of power. So we believe the responsibility for the shutdown was with the Republicans and with President Trump. Having said that, we're not interested now in placing blame. We're interested in getting things done. We want a budget, and we want to deal with DACA. We want to deal with health care issues. We want to deal with opioids. We want to deal with the disaster relief. Let's get on with the business of the Senate and get things done.
How is the conversation behind the scenes? Because, you know, we got to see the curtain pulled back a couple of weeks ago today. Wow, it was only 2 weeks ago. 55-minute long meeting, and it looked like Republicans, Democrats getting along. And I'm just wondering, can you get back to that? And how important is it that you have that morale on Capitol Hill that works in the favor of both?
Harris, it's very important. And quite frankly, there were very encouraging discussions taking place between Democrats and Republicans who want to see the Senate return to its regular order, that we really debate issues, take up amendments, and resolve matters, that we listen to each other, and we compromise. Compromise is not a bad word. That's how our system should operate. And we need to listen to each other if we're going to be able to get that accomplished. And quite frankly, the people that participated in these discussions, there were many Democrats, many Republicans, we all agreed government shutdown makes no sense. We need to take up these issues, and we need to debate these issues and resolve these issues.
Senator Cardin, before I let you go, how is it, and I hear what you're saying, and it sounds a lot like what Republican leadership has said too, we're all going to get along, big kumbaya, big hug at the end. But the fact of the matter is, the president has talked about the wall since the campaign. Americans, when you poll them, they understand the issues along our border and how the president means wall system. So you've got part wall, more border security, you've got a four-pronged approach. How is it then today, your leadership, and Chuck Schumer says, I'm taking the money that I had previously said that we would give off the table? What do you say about that?
Well, quite frankly, a wall has limited value from the point of view of keeping our borders safe.
No, I said a wall system, and I quoted what the White House has been saying.
And Democrats support that. We support border
security.
security.
So why take the money off the table?
No, border security is on the table. We will talk border security. There's needs for better technology. There's a lot of things we can do. Democrats want to keep our borders safe. So border security is clearly on the table.
All right. So when Schumer says I'm taking that $1.6 billion off for the wall, that's part of that system. I just want to be clear when you say you're going to get along, because that's a key component.
I think what the president was asking in that meeting was specifically money designated for a wall, and that has been a controversial issue because there's many of us who believe that it has limited value in keeping our borders safe. Having said that, we're sitting down and we're going to negotiate.
There you go. There it is, working together,
Absolutely.
Senator Cardin.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Harris.
All right, so Democrats, those who are far more to the left than others in their party, reportedly so upset about their party's vote to reopen the government that they're now threatening primary challenges against some of those who voted yes. Are we starting to see a crack, a divide among the Democrats along the lines of the primary season? And after letting lawmakers strike their own deal on that spending bill, President Trump is reportedly anxious to get more involved in the immigration negotiations. Now, remember, I asked how involved he would be in keeping the government open over the next few days, and Hogan Gidley from the White House indicated as much as he has been, so that's a lot. Is that a good idea? Liberal Democrats reportedly so upset about their party's vote to reopen the government without securing protections for Dreamers, they're now threatening primary challenges against some of those Democrats who voted yes. This as nearly every Democratic senator eyeing a potential 2020 presidential run voted against reopening the government. Joining me now is RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany and DNC Vice Chairman Michael Blake. Great to see you guys. Kayleigh, I want to start with you and just kind of get your take, if you will, from across the aisle on what's happening.
Well, it's interesting. You know, let's step back and assess the Democratic Party right now. They've managed to ostracize most of the country. The Harvard-Harris poll shows 58% of Americans did not want a government shutdown because of DACA. And not only that, they did this purportedly for their far radical left-wing base, who is now livid at them. You know, look at the headlines. MoveOn.org says fury. Democracy for America called it political cowardice. America's Voice said there were tears of anger and disappointment. Luis Gutierrez said they caved. So right now, the only people pleased with the Democratic caucus appears to be Chuck and Nancy. Not good.
Michael, how do you bridge this divide in your party? I mean, a primary challenge would be kind of dicey.
Look, you know, as a child of immigrants, obviously none of us wanted to be in the situation that we're in right now, but let's make sure we're focusing on the facts. I mean, Kayleigh, I respect her greatly, but sometimes talking points get in the way of actual facts. We're in this situation because September 5th last year, President Trump decided to rescind DACA protections for communities across the country. As it relates to where we're at right now, the challenge of what's been happening is we're arriving in a few weeks as it relates to this vote. What changed over the last few days? You were able to have Mitch McConnell finally say that a vote would come forward. You were able to have a reduced continuing resolution for 3 weeks instead of 4 weeks. You counter the points that a lot of Republicans continue to try to say that we were hurting the military. Jim Mattis himself said that operations would continue for the military. So we're in a space right now where, yes, people are frustrated, they're upset, they're angry. But let's be clear about everything in totality. By essentially a 20-point margin, people blame the Republicans for the shutdown. Never in our history has a party had the White House.
Polls are you looking at there?
The multiple polls, Harris. The poll that Kayleigh was referencing was specifically as it relates to DACA. I'm saying as it relates to the shutdown itself. Why? Because when you look at it, never in our history, I heard you respectfully, never in our history has a party had the White House, the Senate, and Congress and the U.S. House of Representatives and had a government shutdown.
You want to talk about talking points? That is a DNC talking point that is not true. There have been shutdowns.
Just tell me when
has
has
every
there been
branch
an
of
instance?
government. It has happened. Well, tell me your polls, by the way, because you don't cite any polls there.
Kayleigh, I'm literally
during the
just
Carter
asking you a
administration
question.
is one example. During the Carter administration, I just gave you one. Now, let me correct your facts, because you want to deal in facts, not false Democratic talking points. The facts are DACA recipients across this country are in this place because President Obama unconstitutionally acted when he issued this protection. You guys had 8 years.
To protect
you
them.
had
You're
8 years
right.
during the Obama administration to come up with a permanent solution for DACA. You did not. It was unconstitutional. Its counterpart DACA was already struck down by a court.
Let me step in here, because I've asked my team.
2013.
Let me step in here. That means I'm talking. That means I'm talking.
But 2013, all I'm saying, Harris, is we're literally talking about things that are just actually inaccurate.
I've asked my team to look at the polling that was making news yesterday that showed that 31% of participants, and they're going to find it and pop it up, but I don't even need it because I remember it, blame Democrats for the shutdown. And why is that important? Because you guys capitulated to a deal that you potentially already had on Friday via Chuck
Harris,
Schumer.
you're
There
literally
it is on the
conveying
screen.
a partial. You're actually again. Let's be fair. You actually just gave a partial data. You actually just gave a partial data point. So let's be clear. The point I said was who was being blamed more by the margins. Republicans were being blamed more for the government shutdown. Again, we talk about the facts of the matter. To Kayleigh's point, in 2013, when a deal came before, where the Senate, a bipartisan Senate deal, moved forward on trying to actually help when it comes to this situation, it was shut down by Republicans. We are in this situation. Again, the word that Kayleigh used were the protections that were granted to DACA recipients.
I want to give Kayleigh the last word on this.
It was rescinded.
Kayleigh, go ahead.
It was rescinded on September 5th by President Trump. Let her have the last word, please.
Michael, you are living in DNC la-la land, because the fact is, even the media across the board,
President Trump rescinded this on September 5th.
I let you have 30 seconds there, so give me just a few. You have MSNBC saying that this was a failure. Democrats got nothing. You have Fox's Brett Hume saying this is the first time a Republican won. You have CNN's Jim Acosta saying Democrats caved. Across the board, everyone is admitting Democrats lost. Live in DNC la-la land, please, because it means Republicans will sail to victory in 2018.
Well, and let me say this real quickly.
Yet again,
as I set up this segment to have you guys go back and forth. Can he not hear me? As I set up the segment, the whole point of it was that on the Democratic side, there is a threat of primary challenges because people are not happy that the Dreamers didn't actually get a deal. What they got is on February 8th, hopefully by then, according to Democrats, they'll have some language, some way to go forward to tackle the situation and get something in place before March. That's what, and potentially that was already on the table on Friday. Great to have you both. Next time we have you, we'll have you here on set so you can look at each other in the eye, because I always think that changes the conversation a little bit. Thank you both.
Thanks, Harris.
All right, let's move on to this. This is breaking news today and something that we now have more detail on. It's a deadly shooting at a Kentucky high school. At least one person has died. Others are wounded. We'll have a live report from there moments away. Also, Attorney General Jeff Sessions says the Justice Department will investigate those missing text messages that were sent between two FBI officials accused of having anti-Trump bias and some kind of plan to keep the president out of the White House. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte joins me to talk about his concerns about the bias at the Bureau and what needs to be done to get to the bottom of it all. Stay close. We're about to see President Trump sign some trade actions or put things into place. You may have heard that he is putting some high tariffs on imports of washing machines and solar panels from certain places. On the list, China and South Korea. In fact, South Korea is not happy about it. They want to go to the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and put their case forth that this is going to hurt their economy. But Section 201 in safeguards against some cases where it was found that there was substantial cause of injury to domestic manufacturers. So, you know, this is the first time that we will have heard from the president directly, not from a tweet and not in pictures, signing the government shutdown and reopening the government, I should say, the deal to do that. But inside the White House, in the Oval Office, he'll sign these trade actions, and they will have an effect on washing machines and solar panels coming into the United States. More to come on that. Just want to let you know we're watching for that event as it happens. And a Fox News alert on this. Kentucky's governor is calling the fatal shooting at a high school a tremendous tragedy and calling for people to avoid speculating about anything at this time. The shooting happened today, earlier this morning, at Marshall County High School in southwest Kentucky. One person is dead, others have been wounded. Mike Tobin is live from Benton, Kentucky, with more on this. Mike?
And Harris, we've got a lot of changing in terms of the numbers coming from Governor Matt Bevin as he is speaking at this moment. We know now, sadly, the number of dead has increased. 2 people were killed out here. The number previously was just 1 person who was killed in this hail of gunfire, another senseless act of violence. 14 people were injured by gunshot wounds. 19 have been injured altogether. Some of the people were injured just simply in the panic getting out of the high school. We've got a lot of reports of running and screaming, hundreds of people streaming out of the Marshall County High School when the gunfire here began. We now have pictures of the suspect in this particular shooting. We have a description of him only, that he is a 15-year-old male. He will be charged with murder and attempted murder. We're waiting to hear from the governor as he is speaking about some identification from this shooter, and we don't have any information as far as what the motive will be. We know of the people who were injured with the gunshot wounds. Some people were shot in the face. Some people were shot in the chest. Some people were shot in the leg. Of those who were taken to nearby hospitals, some of them were air evacuated to nearby hospitals to get to their treatment more rapidly. This is a small town. A very closely knit community, one of those communities where they say everyone knows everyone. And this is evidence that even a place as sleepy and peaceful as this is not immune from this random, tragic, and senseless violence that seems to be such a problem all across the nation. Again, the governor is speaking at this moment, trying to provide some answers. Students at the school here have been transferred to a nearby location in the northern part of the county, and parents are urged to go there to pick up their loved ones. Harris?
All right, Mike, thank you very much. I know that there are simultaneous things going on, so you're following a lot there. We appreciate the update. And this Fox News alert. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced the Justice Department is launching an investigation into those missing text messages sent between 2 FBI officials accused of anti-Trump bias. Meanwhile, House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy says he wants to know more about what those officials, Agent Peter Strzok and Attorney Lisa Page, were talking about in new messages that were just released.
What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Radcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right. That is a level of bias that is stunning among law enforcement officers.
Congressman Gowdy was among 3 House committee chairmen who issued a joint statement expressing their concern about those 5 months worth of text messages that have gone missing. I'm joined now by one of those people, those 3, House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte, a Republican from Virginia. And even though he's only in Virginia, we've got a little bit of extra delay, so I want to apologize for that early on. First of all, catch me up on exactly the headline today that you want the American people to be aware of.
Well, Harris, the headline is that we have a very serious problem at the FBI with a number of people at the highest levels of the department who have been engaged in activities based upon the limited information we already have from these struck page texts and other documents that we have seen that raises great concern, and action needs to be taken. So I'm pleased that Attorney General Sessions is going to launch an investigation into what happened to those texts. And I hope they are recovered, but it is no coincidence, in my opinion, that we're missing texts that run from when the Russia investigation was launched right up to the point where you have the Mueller investigation being launched the day before, and then suddenly they start appearing again. And some of these texts are very disturbing, as Trey Gowdy noted. They illustrate a conspiracy on the part of some people, and we want to know a lot more about that. So we'll be continuing our joint judiciary oversight investigation, and we will get to the truth.
Wow. Or we can just believe it's a great deal of coincidence. You don't sound like a man who has been in Washington a long time and would steep down the end of coincidence, so we need to know what it was. Have you ever heard of the secret society that was being talked about in those text messages?
No, but you may recall that in the batch of text messages that were provided to us back in December, there was discussion about a plan B, if you will, that they were going to go to. So again, this is all, in my opinion, related to the presidential elections, and very disturbing that high-ranking officials in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which, by the way, is the most important law enforcement organization in the world, and tens of thousands of people there do great work keeping us safe and solving crimes and preventing terrorist attacks every day. They are being besmirched by a small number of people who have been engaged in, I think, serious wrongdoing.
Before I let you go, I'm curious about something that Democrats are saying. They're accusing Republicans of trying to undermine the Russia investigation overall. What's your reaction to that?
Not in the least. We have in no way interfered with the special prosecutor, Mr. Mueller, and his work. We want to make sure that he is doing it in a fair and impartial way. As you know, Mr. Strzok was a part of that team and was removed, and that's a good thing he was removed, but there are other people in that investigation that also have engaged in questionable activities. So we want that investigation to move forward, but we also have to do our oversight responsibility with regard to the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in doing that, we have uncovered very serious concerns about what was going on in the department long before that investigation was ever even launched.
Yeah. You know, the big question has been and continues to be, if you find out there's bias at the FBI, what will accountability look like? Want to bring you back on a different day. Thanks for joining us from Virginia. Thank you very much. Well, we are learning Attorney General Jeff Sessions was questioned by the special counsel's office for several hours last week. In fact, it was in the special counsel's office. What does all this mean for the White House? Our power panel will weigh in next. We're now learning counsel Robert Mueller's team questioned Attorney General Jeff Sessions for several hours, and it happened in his office. He's believed to be the first member of President Trump's cabinet to be interviewed in the Russia investigation. The panel now, back from Outnumbered, Josh Holmes, former chief of staff to Senator Mitch McConnell, and Jessica Tarlov is here, senior director of research for Bustle.com and a Fox News contributor as well. So some details coming, some color coming forth. I asked White House Deputy Press Secretary earlier in the program, you know, how much head notice did you get, heads up? What are your thoughts as we kind of move forward with this?
I think it's all part of the process. If there's one person that we absolutely knew was going to be interviewed by the Mueller investigation, it was going to be Jeff Sessions, both for his role as Attorney General with the Comey dismissal, but also with his role on the campaign. And I think he's had a number of questions that he's answered over the last 6 months. One of the reasons why he recused himself from the investigation itself. So I don't think this is surprising.
See, I think that recusal is probably one of the points, and it's the thing that the president was not pleased with, and Hogan Gidley said it on this very program a few minutes ago. Yeah, the president's on record, wasn't happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely not, and I agree with Josh that this was to be expected. It's interesting, though, to think about whether this is an indication that we're wrapping things up or if we're just getting started with a new portion of the investigation.
Well, we don't know.
Well, no, we don't know, but that's fun to speculate about. Neil Cavuto was just talking about it in the last hour, that he had been hearing from people that he thought that this indicated that now they were at the real top level there, and then they would be phasing out. But certainly if they find something out from Jeff Sessions, who, yes, did do a lot of testifying, but a lot of evading as well, a lot of I don't recall, and then found out later down the line that he did recall certain meetings with Ambassador Kislyak, et cetera, we could be looking at a longer road here.
So I asked the White House representative there if the president is next, and of course I got deferred again to the White House counsel. But you know, you asked the questions.
Sure. Well, look, I think
we know he's on the list.
The president's attorneys have been on record over the last 3 weeks saying that this is something that they're negotiating with the Mueller team.
Either on paper or in person, that interview with the president.
Yeah, and what they want to do is provide as much information as they can. Now, whether or not it has to be in person or whether or not it can be submitted in writing is something that they're negotiating. And so, but I think, you know, just to your point, is this the end? You don't ordinarily interview the most significant players at the beginning, right? So I think that
we certainly know it's not the beginning, but if he's going to be going through many cabinet members, this is certainly the one that was the most obvious that he had to talk to.
But here's my question for you, Jessica. So far, no evidence of coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. And, you know, we tossed that word around, collusion, but coordination is, and you've heard lawmakers on this program in the last hour, that's what you're looking at. No evidence of that. So if they talk with cabinet members and they talk with the president and there still isn't any of that evidence, when will Democrats back away from the cheese tray?
I think when the final ruling, or however it's presented, comes out there. I mean, this is a flowing investigation. We do know that
over, will you let go?
Well, certainly if Bob Mueller says to me, there's no fire there. There was a little bit of smoke and puffs here, and we have the, like, you know, Mike Flynn and Paul Manafort and George Papadopoulos and
nothing
whatever.
To do with coordination or
well, coordination. I mean, between members of the campaign and the president himself are different things. We've discussed the fact that it could be that Donald Trump himself didn't do anything, but there were high-ranking members who were in communication with the Russians. That'll be a different story, but I trust Bob Mueller.
Well, I think almost every special counsel gets into the theater of the absurd. That's why no party likes special counsels. And now we're in a situation here where we've ventured far afield from the original reason for the investigation itself. Now we're investigating the investigation. And so I think that they have an obligation to come to the end of this sooner rather than later.
We'll be right back. Stay close.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Perino. On the Daily Briefing, new reports that Chuck Schumer is withdrawing a major concession he offered to President Trump last week. What will it mean for avoiding another shutdown? We're live on Capitol Hill. Plus, we're waiting to hear from the president for the first time since the shutdown ended. We'll bring you his comments as soon as we get them. And is the world economy on shaky ground? One analyst warning another recession is looming. All that and more on the Daily Briefing, top of the hour.
And in fact, we've just been given word with the president inside the Oval Office. He is signing those executive actions to impose tariffs on things coming into this country that he says he doesn't want things to be uneven for the U.S. economy anymore. Washing machines and solar panels are coming in from China and South Korea. He's placing high tariffs on those. But in the meantime, we know from just moments ago, we can tell you what's happening inside, because he's being asked about from reporters there, Attorney General Jeff Sessions being being pulled in, the first member of his cabinet to be pulled into the investigation by Bob Mueller, special counsel for the FBI. He was also asked about the man that President Trump put in the job to lead the FBI right now, Christopher Wray, and all those missing emails and looking at potential bias at the FBI. So getting the president on the record about those two things. That video will break in just a moment as they clear the pool, and we will bring it to you live. And I'm listening now. All right. Okay, so we'll watch for that, and as it happens, we'll bring it to you. So, Josh and Jessica, what do you make of this?
Well, on the trade front, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, whether China and South Korea and Mexico, who are the ones that are harmed the most by this change in policy, actually take their complaints to the WTO.
Well, South Korea is already saying that that's what they're going to do.
Well,
yeah,
we'll see if they actually get there, if this week brings, with being in Davos, there could be more conversations to come there about.
Yeah, I mean, look, like it, love it, or hate it, what President Trump promised is that he was going to start to drive a hard bargain on the trade front, and in particular, Asian countries with imported goods.
In particular, China. And we're dealing with North Korea right now.
Right. Look, this is all part of the plan. I'm not surprised that he's done this right before Davos. I think it does give him something to talk about when he's there with world leaders. And so, you know, to his core supporters, I think most people would say this is exactly what they want.
But if their prices go up, that's the concern there, because we need to make sure that Americans are also getting a good deal on these things.
Economies more than it will hurt ours, because China and South Korea both, on these issues of washing machines and solar panels, when you look at their economy, they actually import more things like our soybeans in the center of the country here in America. They actually, it will hurt their economy more because they're exporting far less.
Yeah,
Josh?
the point is you have to work these things out, right? I mean, for too long we've just basically had two sides of the argument. Either you have higher prices because you're not engaging in international trade, or you losing jobs because you engage in isolationism. The reality is it's somewhere in between. I think this gives the president some leverage to make a deal.
All right. On the news of Attorney General Sessions, the first member of the president's cabinet being pulled into the Russia investigation, the president says, and again, we're going to get these comments directly from him, but I'm giving you what's happening inside that room right now, inside the White House as he signs inside the Oval Office. The president says he's not concerned about Sessions' Mueller interview at all. He does not discuss the interview with him. And of course, we had a member of the White House as well tell us, you know, they're not going to comment at this point. And you know what? They need to stay neutral, Josh.
That's right. No, I mean, look, they're playing this exactly the way they should. And actually, in some of the ways where early on they got themselves tripped up, which was commenting on the ins and outs of the investigation as it goes. Keeping their distance and
even commenting to the head of the FBI.
That's right. That's right. No, this is exactly the way they should be handling this. And Jeff Sessions is going to talk to Mueller, and there's nothing the White House can or should do about it.
Well, it happened for several hours, and we're told inside the special counsel's office. And this is happening. The man that the president put in charge, Christopher Wray of the FBI, has had a lot on his plate. We've already seen him testify on Capitol Hill. I mean, he's got people in the organization, in the agency there, text back and forth, and now they've got missing text messages between two people who had anti-Trump bias, this talk of a secret society that we found out. So the president is asked about Christopher Wray coming up, and he says that Wray did not threaten to resign. Josh?
Well, that was the big story, right? I mean, today we learned that, according to at least one published report, that he did threatened to resign, so the president is clearly disputing that. Whatever the case may be, they need to get to the bottom of these missing emails. I think that's part of the reason why everybody's really skeptical.
Those text messages, which, by the way, there are not 50,000 of them, that were exchanged between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the president falsely tweeted that this morning, they're not under any investigation, these two. And when Bob Mueller found out that there was anything inappropriate going on, and it would be a violation of DOJ policy for them to be doing this, he immediately removed Peter Strzok from the investigation. So I think that it's very clear that the special counsel takes this seriously, and I understand why the president is upset about it, but it does allow for another storyline to undermine the Bob Mueller investigation, to say, oh, look, you know, we have this going on within the FBI, they have a secret society, they had a backup, an insurance policy, as it were. When we know that FBI agents are entitled to their personal opinions, that is protected under the Hatch Act, and there's no evidence that they acted upon any of this.
I want to step in with this, though, because I have heard you and other Democrats express concern about this one point. With these two going back and forth, they involved other people by saying that there was some sort of a secret society. So now, potentially, this could be, you know, we don't know. So we do need to get to the bottom of this. When they talked about an insurance policy, I guess it could have been the two of them. Are they powerful enough to keep the president out of the office? Apparently they are not. No. But if this is indicative of something else that's happening at the FBI, the American public deserve to know that.
Well, their own worst enemy here is the fact that these text messages are missing, right? If there isn't
around about the time that they need to see that they're looking kind of, into this, around about the time that they were talking about these things that I just mentioned.
And let's not act like these are two